Well, hey guys, welcome to tonight's stream. As you can see, I got my webcam to work. Maybe that's why they thought I was AI content. I don't know. Since we just did a drop screen last week, not like we had all those other live streams, but tomato, tomato. Hi, Blondie and Leia, and I see Osiris. Hey, buddy. And hello to Lance and Blaze and shit. Uh, Ram. I was trying not to look back to see it. I'm like, I can remember all these things. Hello to Lance and Ram and Blaze, and hello to everyone. Hi, Winter. Good to see you. But yeah, so it's been a week. Pretty much everybody here is on the Discord, but we had a really active week this week. If you want to keep up with stuff and see chicken pictures and stuff, be sure to sign up for the Discord. Um, Trying to think if we've got any more news. For those of you who don't know, I got demonetized. Yay! So now I'm just gonna say fuck a lot. What are they gonna do? They're gonna take me off? I don't care. Hey Kathleen, good to see you. But yeah, so I got swept up in that whole narration demonetization thing, and I've watched a couple of videos about it. People that have also been demonetized. Hang on, let me adjust my chair a little bit there. Hey Jessica, and a lot of them are suggesting things like, diversifying content. And it's true. I have gotten a little lazy with the music in the background of my videos. I probably need to, put some different stuff in there every now and again. But if narrating is what my channel does, I don't understand why I would have to diversify to get around it. Like, I don't know. Narrating's what this channel's always been about. And I don't see why I couldn't continue on like that indefinitely, honestly. Like, I I know everybody puts a lot of work into their channels, but like I do. You guys know. I write 5 new pieces of fiction for you guys every week. Like, it's a lot of effort. Like, we put in a lot of work around here, and I don't understand why I would need to like a lot of them are like, maybe diversify into Let's Play. Hey Lou, good to see you. Diversify into Let's Plays, or maybe do other stuff. Like, I got a full-time job now. Like, I like hanging out and doing YouTube stuff, but unless they're paying me, that's not something I can devote all of my time to. Like, I say that, like, right now all of my monetization is going to my marketing guy, pretty much. Like, I can't even pay him since they're not paying me. So I don't know. Like, I'm hoping to hear back from them. I've been super annoying on X. No, I've been super annoying on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. Um, and just kind of been reaching out to like see if somebody who has human eyeballs will look at my channel. But I don't know. In the future, I mean, I'll continue to be on YouTube. Like, I'm gonna continue to do YouTube stuff, but um, I'm also weighing other options. We may have a bigger presence on Spotify in the near future. May do some stuff with TikTok. May do some stuff with the other platforms that have yet to be named yet. I don't know. Start doing some stuff like Steam Labs, which is what I'm using now to stream to you guys. Lets me stream to multiple platforms. I just haven't set it up yet because I've always been on YouTube. Maybe I should start. Maybe I should start branching out some. I should have already, but you know, it's something that we'll look into. The channel here isn't going to change. Whether they pay me or not, I'll keep putting you guys out content. Like you guys will get your content. Like I like writing and I like narrating. And I like you guys. So the slop will flow no matter what YouTube says. If I have to go somewhere else, then I have to go somewhere else. It ain't a big thing. But, there will always be content, and I will always let you guys know how to get that content if the time comes. Shit. We we survived getting kicked off of No Sleep. I think we can probably survive getting kicked off of YouTube as well, but it's just gonna mean, that content looks different, or that uploads look different, or that Patreon tiers look different or something. But it's not gonna slow us down. Like, the stories will continue to be there. Speaking of, it's probably about time we got to those stories. Trying to think if I have any new news to put out before we do. Thanks, Leia. I'm fond of you guys too. Thanks, Jessica. I like to hear that. I always like to hear that I'm a part of you guys' day and that you like listening to stuff. Morgan and Tess just got put out on Audible, so if you like listening to my narration stuff, I've got about 5 or 6 narrated books up there now. Not mine. Mine's still coming along, but I'm on a deadline with this next one she's got me reading. So I'm just trying to get it done before I do a lot of work on Towsy Homestead. But Towsy Homestead should be up before too long. I'd say probably before July. I've just got to sit down and get after it. But after that, I think I'm going to do Douglas Gage Beyond Savings so that we can get an audio version of that. My plan is after that to start releasing the compilations in audiobook form, which may be a little more ambitious. I'm going to start re-recording the audio for a lot of the audio. Well, for a lot of the stories that you hear. They're going to be... I've learned some new tricks since some of these came out. I've gotten a lot more comfortable behind a mic since a lot of these came out. So rather than upload the audio I have as audiobook form, I'll probably re-record them. And I'm sure we've lost a few stories along the way. I know we used to have one called Movement Detected that I cannot find the audio for anywhere. That really needs to make a resurgence. And, we'll figure it out. Since YouTube's not paying me, if you guys want to support me in other ways, go to Patreon. Go find the stuff I've narrated on Audible. Blondie's got a few links she'll probably post around. Come to Discord. We post all kinds of stuff on Discord. And we have very lively chatter. So, come on down and be a part of our Discord group. Definitely. Yeah, I know, Winter. I got in touch with somebody and they let their demonetization stand. They said I could reappeal in 90 days, but I've been trying to get a second appeal right now so that I can... It's the same thing that happened when I got monetized the first time. They didn't want to do it because they thought for some reason they thought my content was mechanical content. It wasn't AI slop at the time, but it was very similar. And they thought it might be the same. And I had to point out to them, I do all of my own stuff. Like, we used to do guest stories on here, but I haven't even read a guest story since January, since we did the contest. We do some for Saturday stuff sometimes, but we haven't had a fresh guest story in a while. Like, I do all of our content. I make every one of those cozy horrors you listen to lately. That's me. Like, I sit down and do those fresh daily for you guys. All of our content is fresh, and that's not to toot my own horn. That is to show YouTube, hey, all of this is coming out by my work. Like, no computer's making this for us. Like, it's all me, baby. Like, I'm sitting down to do all this. And algorithms and things are one thing, but you really need, if you're going to tell somebody that the money's drying up and they ain't getting it, then you really need a human set of eyeballs looking at that. Like, I don't feel that's okay. Hi, Cindy. Sorry, I'm up on my soapbox. Um, but yeah, no. What I was saying is, if you if you want to support us, I've got a channel on Spotify. If you want to go look us up there, it's Dr. Plague's World. Um, there'll probably be new things there very soon if YouTube doesn't get their act together. Um, I've got stuff on TikTok. Look me up on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. Again, it's always Dr. Plague's World. It's there's all kinds of stuff. Like there's there's a lot of different ways to support me without, throwing money at it. I know, man, times are tough. Like money's tight right now. If I didn't work for the prison, I don't know what I'd be doing right now. I don't know. Probably back to writing erotica for people. But you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. But there's there's a lot of ways to support me without monetarily doing it. I'd love to see me on Sirius too, absolutely. Um, but just however you support the channel, it's always appreciated. I'm in a position where I don't need the money. The money is nice. I don't depend on it. But there will come a time, hopefully soon, when maybe I do depend on the money, and it would be nice if it was there. Um, yeah, when I was in high school, when I was in college, I used to write custom erotica for people. It was a time. Um, but it's just broke college kids got to pay bills too. But I don't know. It's channel's gonna change a little, but we'll still continue to do stuff. I mean, look, I got my webcam back up, so that's a step in the right direction. Um, let's see. You can support me by buying audiobooks too. Even if you get them with credits or you read them through like Audible Premium or whatever it's called, we still get paid for it. So, if you've already got a subscription, a lot of them are they're newer writers and they're still kind of finding their stride. Well, not Eileen. Eileen's been at it for a long time. So she's got some brand recognition. Hey Susan, we're glad you made it. I might. I've been thinking about it. Book Talk is really popping off. It would be nice to get something to put up there that people would buy. Um, let's see. You guys have probably noticed a lack of peeping again. All the chickens are in the yard for the moment, so it's awfully quiet in here in my office. Cinnamon Roll and Fancy are here, but they're sleepy. Cinnamon Roll's been out today a lot, so she's been running around. Um, those of you not on my Discord, one of my turkeys died. Rory passed away Sunday. He had been just really struggling for a couple of days with a respiratory thing, and he did not make it. It tore me up a lot because I hand raised that guy. Like, he lived in the tank behind me for a long time, and we got close. Ozzy is doing fine though. All the chickens are doing fine. Um, we uh, we did send some of the roosters off to a person, a chicken person who sells us chickens from time to time. So we're down to about 30 chickens and one turkey, but you know, we've got a nice crop of got a nice crop of chickens. So there will be small chickens in the future, I'm sure. Um, Again, it's another good thing about Discord is I always post chicken pictures. Yeah, Cindy, I think there's a link a little bit further up. Blondie, could you toss her a link if you don't mind? Um, that's the only thing I don't like about Steam Labs is interacting with chat on here is kind of a pain. I have to go through like another program in order to do it, and it clutters up my desktop a lot. Oh, but yeah, so you know, it's just been a week, and then like that hasn't stopped me from writing, but it's been a long week, and I was glad to finally get some downtime. Voice is a little husky tonight. I have been fighting allergies as usual. So there's that. If it sounds a little deeper than usual, that's what's going on. Um, Hang on. I think I've got Discord up. I'll just grab one off of there. Hold tight, guys. Da, 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 da. And there you go. Oh, Blondie beat me to it. I've got to figure out how to like mess with the timetable on the chat too, because like it's it's definitely a little wonky. Oh, yeah, Lou, they definitely do. Like they definitely do like adult content now. Patreon does anything. Like back before OnlyFans took off, Patreon wanted to be a little squeaky clean. They wanted to be like a family safe alternative. And nuts to that. They have fully embraced it at this point. But yeah, nah, you know. So lots of good stuff on the horizon. So just stick with us. I'm sure we'll have something. Oh no, I did it. I did a dumb. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's pull up the stories for tonight. Um, Good news tonight. It's a grandpa story. So got a little bit of grandpa story tonight, which is always fun. Let me see if I can pull up some. Where did they go? Trying to find my glimmer lines so I could just put them in there. I know they're in here somewhere. There they are. Uh-oh. You keep an eye on Lance. We can't have him falling out over here. Okie doke. So, we'll save the grandpa story for last, though. That way it'll be a special treat at the end. Alrighty, so let's get rolling. Um, we've got another laughing audience story. We're coming down to like the last couple here. Oh, get that boy on some steroids. So let's see. We're gonna get our laughing audience story. Yeah, I forgot what I said. We've only got about 3 left. Um, so after that, it'll be done, and then we'll be done with the laughing audience for forever, I guess. Well, not forever, but we'll be done with them for, till we get another series or till they pop up somewhere else. Anyway, so tonight we're going to do support group, and I hope you guys like it. I'd like to thank you all for coming. I know it took a lot of guts to come here, but I want you all to know that you're very brave. The 6 of them were assembled in the conference room at the back of the Marriott. Some of them had a long... Hold on a sec. Some of them had a long... Okay. Audio was looking funny on there. I wanted to make sure it was getting the right one. Okay. Some of them had come a long way to be there. Some of them hadn't, living within a stone's throw of the little conference room. It really wasn't much, barely big enough to hold most board groups, but attendees had to admit that it was nice to be surrounded by those who truly knew them. They knew the struggle, they knew what they'd been going through, and they knew what they had to do. Why don't you start with... Off to a rousing start here. Why don't you start, Jane? Why don't you tell us what brought you here today? An older woman stood up and waved at the small group. Her eyes looked haunted, and she had a smell on her that made you believe that she was up to 2 or 3 packs a day. The cigarette smoke wafted around her like a cloud, and, like everyone there, you could tell that she was just trying to make it to the next light up. Jane isn't my real name, but it's the only one I'm willing to give. I was once a well-known seamstress in the New York area. If you've ever been to a Broadway show, then you've probably seen some of my work. I did costumes for Cats, Jesus Christ Superstar, Evita, a long list of other shows. I was working backstage one day when I heard the laughter. It wasn't much, just a little bit of laughter. And then I heard someone scream, and I poked my head out of the door to see what was going on. The woman, Margaret Carracor, who was one of the greatest violinists I'd ever worked with, was crab walking across the stage as this shadow, I think, came after her. She looked terrified, but as it reached out and grabbed her face, she began to laugh hysterically. There we go. More of them came. They all just sort of appeared, and they clung to her as they pulled her into the floor. Then, the one that had touched her looked at me. It smiled, and I knew it would come for me next. I spent the last 5 years running. Let's try that again. I haven't stopped running. Never stayed in one place more than about a week. I do work as a seamstress for small productions now, even doing private work when I can get it. Anything to get me enough gas and enough cigarettes to make it to the next town. I recently learned they were called the gallery, or the laughing audience, or whatever people call them these days. I hear them laughing sometimes, when it's dark or when I'm by myself. I know they're still looking for me, but they just don't seem to have managed to catch up with me yet. Excuse me. They all clapped as Jane sat down. the woman running the meeting turning to the man on her left. Mark, why don't you tell us about your experience next? Mark stood up and waved as he glanced nervously around the room. He was chewing gum, the repetition of his jaw really making it smack, and some of the attendees winced at the sound. He was wearing a suit, an old one that might have looked at home on a banker, but he looked too generic for desk work. I wasn't even supposed to be here. I was supposed to be at home by then. Let's try that again. I wasn't even supposed to be there. I was supposed to be home by then. But somebody had dropped the ball somewhere, and I had to pick up the money. I worked for some bad people. I was going to pick up some money from one of them, a guy I had only talked with 2 or 3 times. I came into the restaurant and I heard him arguing with someone. He was telling them to get out. He was telling them to go away, to leave him alone. And I remember wishing that I had a gun because I thought maybe I'd walked into some underworld shit that I wasn't prepared for. I heard pots and pans being dropped. I heard him screaming at someone to go away and leave him alone. But whoever he was talking to never said a word. Whoever he was talking to just kept coming after him. And as I poked my head into the kitchen, I watched a wave of shadows fall over him and take him somewhere. I ran out right then and there, but it was already too late. They've haunted me for the past 1.5 years, and when I got the email about the support group, I almost ignored it. I don't know how you found me, but I'm kind of glad you did. Just knowing I'm not alone makes me feel safer safer than I have in a long time, at least. More clapping as Mark sat down, but he winced as he looked at the woman leading the group. She covered her face with a hand, burping delicately before bringing it down and giving him a very normal smile. R, would you like to share next? A burly man in overalls crossed his arms over his chest and glowered at her. I would not, thank you very much. The woman smiled broadly, shaking her head at him. Rob, she began, but he blustered over her loud enough to make several people jump. No names. The judge said I didn't have to give you all my name. That was part of the agreement. R, she amended. It's part of the reason we're meeting here. This attendance is court-ordered, and it's the only way you're going to avoid being sent to a psychiatric facility. Come on, R, share with us. The man seemed hesitant, but he uncrossed his arms as he sighed and glowered at the attendees. My name is R, and I'm here because the court and the fascist Judge Alan Ferguson thinks that I'm crazy. I've been studying shadow people, the things you're referring to as the gallery, for quite some time. I saw them in the early 80s when my daddy was a camera operator for a small TV show that never really took off after the first season. It was one of the earliest events of shadow people taking humans that I'm aware of. My daddy sent me out to get him a drink, and when I came back, I couldn't get onto the sound stage. I looked in the window, having to stand on my tippy toes, and I saw blackness as it took over the whole audience and the stage. I could see the creatures, but I don't think they saw me. I ran all the way home, and when I got there, my mother was so glad to see me that we agreed to never talk about what had happened again. She mourned my father, but I found that I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd witnessed. I began doing research on other events of shadow people and laughing shadows taking individuals and such as that, but I didn't really discover anything until the internet became more widely available. After that, I found other people who had seen the laughing shadows, and we began exchanging information about the possibilities of them abducting people. This was right around the first time my mother tried to have me institutionalized. But after 9 months, I managed to convince them that I was sane. Been trying my best to combat the shadow people for the last 30 years. But they ain't something you can fight, only something you can survive. I had been attempting to shut down the live production of Fausti Review because I had noticed the inclusion of the shadow people and knew they were planning something that would take millions of people through their television sets. After sending several threatening messages, the police arrested me, and the judge told me I could either come to this group or I could be institutionalized for a third time. I agreed to come to this group because it seemed the safest and the quickest way to get back to my work. Ara looked up when the woman laughed at him, clearly thinking she was mocking him. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, turning to the woman sitting next to him and smiling at her. "Margaret, why don't you tell us about yourself?" The woman looked like a typical frazzled middle-aged woman, and she seemed to be missing the children to put her in such a state. Little did they know that Margaret was lucky to have a place to stay and food to eat, and children were the farthest thing from her mind. No child had ever caused her anxiety, and likely never would. My name is Margaret. I've been having experiences for the past 6 months, though I believe I'm being haunted and not stalked by these shadow people." Stalked, not stopped. "I moved into an apartment where something very traumatic had happened recently. Someone had died who was very well known and very respected within his community. I don't want to say his name because there's a lot of controversy about what he's done, but I will say that I got the apartment rather cheaply, and that should have been the first indication that something was wrong. I was a psychiatrist before I started seeing them, but now I feel like I might be going crazy. Crazy was never a word I used before the hauntings, but now I've begun to see that it's the most descriptive. I can hear them in my apartment, laughing and chuckling and talking to themselves. Every night they seem to get closer and closer to my bed. I just don't know what to do. When this email arrived, I started to ignore it, but I'm glad I came. Talking with some of you during the initial arrival has helped me see that I'm not alone, and that makes me feel a lot." "How did you know what our emails were?" R cut in, staring at the woman who was running the meeting. "Rob, it's not your turn to speak. Once everyone has had their introduction, we will—" "I just think it's strange that you knew how to contact each of us. I've never heard of any of these people, and I'm the only one who's chronically online enough for you to have heard about. If the judge hadn't told me I had to go to this, I wouldn't be here either. So how did you know how to get in contact with us?" Hang on a sec. "Come on, Rob. Let the lady get done. Let's get through introductions, and then we can—" "No," Rob said. "This don't smell right. I don't know how I didn't see this before. This looks like a trap. Somebody shut down their TV broadcast, and the suicide of that fella, Jarrett, that caused the incident, they're starting to taper off. This seems like tying up loose ends to me. Don't you think it's weird that they've assembled all of us here? How do they know how to contact us? How do they know that if they reached out to us, they'd come?" Some of them began to talk amongst themselves, the low rumbling turning decidedly yeah. I hate when that happens. distrustful. You, Rob asked as he pointed at a woman seated closest to the group moderator. What do you do? What's your profession? Uh, well, I was a hairstylist before I started seeing the shadows. I had set up a studio in an old warehouse. I think a photographer used to be in it. And the shadows started. Oh, what about you? What do you do? He asked the man sitting next to her, the only other one who hadn't introduced himself. Hadn't. I'm a choreographer. I'd been working with some individuals who disappeared suddenly after a mysterious gas leak. I went to the location to pick up a few things, and the shadows have been following me ever since. Have any of you told anybody about the shadows? Have any of you talked to anybody about what you seen? They all shook their heads, and Rob turned to face the woman who had brought them all together. If none of you told, then how did she know? There's no way she could have known if none of you talked about what you've seen. That doesn't strike any of you as weird? That doesn't seem odd to anyone except me? All of them turned in unison to look at the orchestrator of this little group. Needs an arm. And they found her laughing behind her hands. As her hands came down, they saw the dark ichor pooling around her chin and across her cheeks. It was rushing out of her, falling to the floor and across the front of her top. She was laughing, really losing it now. And as she looked up, they could see her mouth along... Try that one again. They could see her mouth elongating as her skin was overtaken by the black tar that made up the creatures many of them had seen. Get a little water there. He's right, because of course he is. I had to have some way to get all of you back where you belong. And I knew most of you had questions and concerns. You were confused. None of you would question a support group. Most of you would just be glad for the camaraderie. Rob was the only one who really was needed. He'd made himself a problem, you see, and we knew that he would be the hardest to lay hands on. So we had to work with a friend in order to bring him this far. We had to bring someone out of retirement who hadn't been in the court since a very particular incident. The judge was more than happy to infect another judge, and then it was just a matter of time. Now I have you all right where I want you. We can tie up all of these loose ends before the show begins. I swear, guys, I do a live stream every week, and it never fails that somebody always calls me. Give me 2 shakes, guys. The woman leaned her head back, and the black ooze began to flow out of her like a fountain. It puddled in the room and crawled towards the members. Straggler. Hey, Crystal. It goes. It's got to be it, I guess. Let's see. It puddled in the room and crawled towards the members of the support group. Rob ran towards the door, but it had been chained from the outside. They pushed and cried and screamed, but no one came to help them. Rob heard as the first two began to laugh. They fell into the dark water and began laughing uncontrollably as it polluted their minds with whatever evil it possessed. It caught another one as they lunged towards the door, and before long it was just Rob and Mark banging on the door as they tried to get someone's attention. It was getting closer and closer, threatening to swallow them up, and as the laughter festered around them, Rob looked at his newfound ally and told him not to let it into his mind. "Don't let it take you. Don't let it corrupt you. It's what they do. They corrupt you with the laughter, and then they..." He stifled a chuckle as the water lapped against his sneakers. They take you when they... Both of them fell down and began to laugh as the influence of the laughing audience swirled around them. It had become too much for either of them, and they fell into the muck and were swallowed by it. Neither of them knew anything but darkness and laughter ever again. The support group orchestrator stood as the dark liquid streamed from her mouth. The gallery would reward her handsomely for all her work. She would have a special place on the stage, and as she sank into the dark water, she was filled with laughter and ecstasy. The show was about to begin. And there you go. That's your laughing audience story for the night. Ooh. Yeah, an oven-baked potato sounds pretty good right about now. Alrighty, let's see. What can we move on to next? I think we might do our Kashmir story. You know, I've never been on the production end of audiobooks, like, getting one of my books done. The more I read about them, the more I'm thinking, like, maybe there's a code they can give me at the end that I can send some of my patrons so they get free audiobooks. That would definitely make up for our book tier we've got over there. Maybe something to look into, But yeah, let's move on to our Kashmir story. As some of you will remember last week, Mr. Seraph was talking about his experiences with the Bright and telling his siblings what happened. And today, those siblings are sitting in on another council meeting. So let's see what they've got to chinwag about. This one is called War Council, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Give me just a second. I got to remember how exactly the mayor's voice goes. It's been a minute. It's kind of it's like a old timey lawyer sorta, kind of like a old foghorn leghorn. Because he's got the first lines. I've got to remember exactly how it goes. All right, let's go. Order, order. This council meeting will come to order. The council was assembled yet again. John Marvolo, Dr. Winters, the mayor, the kid from the bus station, Sheriff Guthrie, and even the warden had made an appearance. Most of the council couldn't remember a time when he had shown up for a meeting, but it appeared that things had truly gotten dire. This was no longer a city council, but a war council, and the news wasn't good. There was another chair with someone in it, a chair that had been empty for almost as long as the warden's. The writer was rocking in his chair, his legs pulled up to his chest, and he was mumbling something low and thoughtful. He was clearly struggling with something, but none of them knew how to help him. Everyone in the room, Sheriff Guthrie included, felt a stab of pity for the man, but there was little that could be done to help him. "Sheriff Guthrie, would you like to tell the council what you have discovered?" Guthrie stood up, but the tone of the mayor's question made him feel uneasy. The mayor had never lost an opportunity to remind him that he was not the sheriff, but today he had not only called him by his title, but had asked him rather than told him to do something. Things had reached a head if the mayor had forgotten their little game of snipe. "By my estimations, we've lost another half a mile on the borders. I went to the checkpoints yesterday, and one of them was just gone." "Gone?" John asked. "What do you mean?" "Like, it was gone. The town has its own boundaries, its own borders, and it seems to be shrinking. Kashmir is drawing in on itself so that it can protect its borders, and if it continues to draw in, we may lose some of the residential neighborhoods soon." "Save the hand, detach the fingers," the writer babbled ominously. "How long could this take?" the mayor asked, ignoring the babbling writer. "Hard to say," Guthrie said. "Weeks, days, maybe hours if the town feels threatened enough. It will protect itself, and it feels like it'll cut us off if it needs to. We need a plan. We're losing ground, and it's not all external either." "Oh, well, tell them I said thanks. Good pups." "What makes you say that?" the warden asked. "I've seen the evidence," Guthrie said, and he brought a hand down on the table for emphasis. "Someone is leaving these pamphlets and books. Someone is leaving the graffiti around town. Someone is gathering the others together. This is a cancer, and it is spreading." "Wait, what graffiti?" Dr. Winters asked. "I haven't heard of any graffiti." Guthrie sat down and nodded to the kid. Tell him what happened on your turf, nonetheless." The kid from the bus station sighed as he stood up and addressed the council. "We had some punks do a little bit of spray painting around the back of the bus station. I told the sheriff about it because I'd hoped he could find out who had done it. So far, there have been no arrests." He stared at Guthrie as he finished, sitting down and crossing his arms. "What did the graffiti say?" Dr. Winter inquired. "All prepare for the coming of the bright. We don't even know if they did it. It could just be some kids." "I don't care if it's the ladies' auxiliary," the mayor said as he cut over the kid. "If the Bright is involved or even named in this treason, then you find whoever did it, and I want them tied up and put in Stagview." Damn, that's some word soup. Yeah, there we go. All right. Let me try that again. Might have. If the Bright is... All right. If the Bright is involved, then it is treason. When you find whoever this is, I want them tried and put in Stagview. The warden lifted an eyebrow at that. "If it's a bunch of kids, Mayor, then you'll have to build me a new wing for juvenile offenders. My prison doesn't hold people under the age of 18. "Then Guthrie will have to hold them till all of this blows over. Either way, I want anyone suspected of being part of the Bright off the street. Do I make myself clear?" Mayor, I only have so many holding cells, Sheriff Guthrie started, when the mayor slammed his hand down on the table. It made a much louder sound than Guthrie's had, and brought everyone assembled to silence. "Do I make myself clear?" he shouted, and everyone nodded and said he was crystal clear. Good. The next thing upon the agenda is a report from our favorite therapist. Dr. Winters, you have the floor. Dr. Winters stood up and smiled at the assembled council. I received a report from my younger brother, Mr. Seraph. He's been accosted by the Bright while he was out on matters of acquisition. They wounded him rather badly, and it raises some concerns about the effectiveness of me and my siblings if it comes to a fight. I don't need to tell any of you around the table, but my brother and I are demonic in nature. The warden looked as if he wanted to object, but Dr. Winters put a hand out to silence him, and to her surprise, he sat back. I don't know how it would be a surprise. Most of you have seen us in our true forms. However you might feel about it, we protect this town when it needs to be protected. This is our home. At least, the warden and I feel that way. We have many different people in this town, and our only real connection is that we love it, and it feels like home to us. I'm not saying that we won't need you when it's time to fight. No, that's not the line. Hang on. Try that one again. I'm not... Okay. There was a weird comma in there and it threw me off. I'm not saying that we won't stand with you when the time comes to fight. My brother and I agree on that much, but if they employ these weapons against us, we may not be as effective as we normally are. Even a giant can be laid low with a rock, the writer mumbled before looking at his fingernails and seeming to find something amiss. What sort of weapons did they employ against your brother? Guthrie asked. Did he describe them? Dr. Winters seemed to be trying to find the right words. He said they used books with light inside that hurt people. It seems fitting for a cult that worships the bright to use a bright light, I guess, but the nature of it may be otherworldly, and it could just as easily hurt people as it could help us. As it could us. Worse still, this may be how they're converting people. The light hurts us because we're also not of this world, but if you stand before that light, you might be turned to their way of thinking. I think everyone should be cautious if we engage these people. Engaging them seems like something we'll have to do, whether we want to or not, John Marvolo said, as he steepled his fingers before his eyes. I've been told by a lot of people that they've attempted to get in their minds through the radio and the television. What worries me is that for every 5 people that may have told me about it, there's 1 or 2 that haven't. We don't really know how insidious these people are just yet, and we should all be on our guard. What's our plan of defense if they do get through the borders? Do we have anything we can rely on to help us? There are always people willing to defend the town, Dr. Winters said as color rose in her cheeks. In time of crisis, the town always comes together. Need a little water. But, I mean, if you're looking for names, the wizards that live on the outskirts will certainly come to help us. The botanical garden will likely rise to the occasion, too, and I'm sure there are others who would wish to stand in defense of the town. Let's not forget, this is the South as well. There's likely more guns than citizens sitting in people's desks, drawers, or inside china cabinets. If the Bright tries to come at us with books full of knowledge and light, They may be pleasantly surprised when they find the end of someone's shotgun. It may be time to see who we can count on to stand and fight. Dr. Winters, I would like you to dispatch someone to go speak with the Botanical Gardens. You may go yourself if you choose. Tell them the situation and let them know. We may very well need their help very soon. If you could go and talk to the wizards you spoke of as well, it would be greatly appreciated. I can, and I will. I pray we will not need their help, but no one can turn away allies at this point. Weird. Sheriff Guthrie, make sure that all your deputized men are armed and take them to the range when you can. If they're going to be firing weapons, then I want them to be accurate. Find out who has specialized firearms training. If we could put a few men on the roof of some buildings with rifles, that would be outstanding. The rest of you, sound out the townspeople that you know and find out who will stand with us when the time comes. John, maybe you can get on the radio and tell your people about what's happening. Build up a little town spirit so that when the time comes, we won't be outnumbered. Can do, John said. Town spirit is what my radio show is all about. Doc, does the writer have anything? Any information he might give us would be useful. I know he knows more than he's letting on, and I know he has wisdom locked away in there somewhere. But the writer sat up and yelled, his voice cutting over the mayor's as the other residents of the table leaned back a little bit. The man was hyperventilating into his knees, his screams coming through the space between his legs, and as he parted them, he looked over his knees and said something unexpected. We can't fight them. I can barely fight them, and I created this town. They're in my head. They're always in my head. They crawl across my skin like bugs. They burrow into my brain like maggots, just looking for tasty bits of flesh to gnaw on. I've been holding them at bay all this time, pushing them away as they try to get in. I don't know how much longer I can do it. You need to do something, and you need to do it quickly. If something isn't done, that I don't know if I can hold them back much longer. Please, 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 please. He went right on yelling for another few minutes, and his pleases got quieter as he finally rested his head against his knees and was silent. The room was quiet as well, everyone looking around as if expecting someone to speak. Make alliances, the mayor finally said when no one else spoke. Set your guards, arm them, prepare them, and get anyone and everyone ready for a fight that we may not be able to win. Anyone who fights, anyone who lives in this town, needs to know that if the town falls to these bastards, then there may not be a town worth living in anymore. Those who side with the Bright are traitors, and they need to be treated as such. Traitors are not held in captivity, Sheriff Guthrie. Traitors are not given fair trials. Traitors are executed in the streets, where others can watch and think better of their actions. We are at war, everyone, and we need to start acting like it. Sheriff Guthrie, I want a curfew in effect from this day forward. Anyone not working after 9 p.m. is to be indoors, no exception. Anyone found on the street after 9 p.m. is to be questioned and put in a holding cell. If you believe they are a traitor, then you do what must be done. Marvolo, announce this over your radio show as well. People need to know what's at stake, and it's time they started hearing it from us. Go about your business, be prepared, and be ready at a moment's notice. The city council broke up then. going their own way, as Dr. Winter helped the writer out of the council chamber. The time for talk was over, it seemed. The time for action was now. There you go. That's your Kashmir story for the week. Oh, there we go. I mean, that's what playlists are pretty good for. But damn it, I did a dumb. You can always just put on a playlist and let it run, I guess. All right, let's see. We'll save the grandpa story for last. Alrighty, we'll read both our short stories, I guess. The first one is about a house party and about always letting your wine breathe. So I hope you guys enjoy it. It's called Let the Wine Breathe. Nuh-uh, not yet. You gotta let it breathe, man. The party had only been going for about a half an hour, and Leonard had been positioned around the wine since the cork had come out. That was Leonard, though. He was usually the guy who brought wine and then rattled on about it. He always talked about the vintage, about the area in which it was made in, and a dozen other such things, but today he seemed to be harping on when to drink it. He'd been the second to arrive, only minutes behind me, and he had presented Janet with the bottle as if it were a wondrous gift. "Wow," Janet had said when he came in with the old bottle of wine. "It looks great, Leonard. What did you bring us today?" "It's a..." And then he rattled off a name in a language that I didn't understand, but it had been sealed in 1901 and was supposed to be pretty fancy. He took it out and pulled a corkscrew out of his pocket. Leonard had always been a little funny about his wine, and when he tapped the corkscrew on the bottle before working it into the cork, I didn't think much of it. This was just how Leonard was. Everything had to be done with as much flash and panache as possible. Janet had brought some wine glasses over from the kitchen, but when she reached for the bottle, Leonard had brushed her hand away and waggled a finger at her. "Nuh-uh-uh, not yet. It needs to breathe." Janet looked a little miffed, but she nodded and set the glasses down around the bottle. Now the party was in full swing, but Leonard was still hanging around the bottle as if afraid someone would steal it. He was like a fly around something particularly tasty, and he just kept landing and sampling as the night went on. I wanted to mingle. I also wanted to do a little dancing in the space that Janet had cleared out, but my eyes just kept going back to Leonard and his wine. It was a weird bottle of wine, to be sure. The bottle was dusty looking, the kind of thing you might find in someone's basement, and the label was in what I assumed was French, given that the name had sounded like something out of France. The glass was tinted green, making me think of old medicine bottles, and it was kind of unpleasant to look at, but it was probably meant to be very tasty. Nah. But that probably meant it would taste heavenly. He was sitting next to the bottle as I reached out for a glass, and he put a hand over the top as I pulled it toward me. "Not yet. You gotta let it breathe." I rolled my eyes, releasing the glass as I crossed my arms. "Okay, but for how long?" Leonard smiled and winked at me, which surprised me a little. "You can't rush these things. Takes as much time as it takes. You don't want to drink inferior wine, do you?" I rolled my eyes and told him that I guessed I didn't. I moved away to mingle with some of the other party guests. Janet pulled me over to talk to some of her work friends, and As soon as they let me float on, I saw Lisa and went to ask her how her summer abroad had been. Then I saw Dale and Thomas, and then it was Carter and his wife, but my mind just didn't seem to be fixed on any one conversation. No matter how much I talked, I kept thinking about that wine. They invited me over to play Cards Against Humanity, but I felt like my plays were a little bit stilted as my eyes kept trailing back to the damn wine. I needed to taste it. I needed to know what all the fuss was about. The longer I looked and the longer I lingered, the more I just needed to know. That's the best I can explain it. It had become like a mania in me to know what exactly Leonard was gatekeeping there. As I watched, I began to wonder if the wine was okay for consumption. Leonard had said that it needed to breathe, and the more I watched it, the more it did appear to breathe. It drew in these slow breaths. At least that's how it looked to me. The glass seemed to be pulling itself in and out, and Leonard's smile seemed to widen every time he noticed. We always use the term, let the wine breathe, but I'd never actually thought about it. The wine didn't usually breathe, not the way we did, but today it seemed to be doing just that. It seemed to be breathing hard enough that the bottle expanded a little with each exhalation. It looked small when Leonard had uncorked it, no bigger than a $5 bottle of Strawberry Hill or Blackberry Merlot from Walmart. But now it had almost grown to the size of something that you would pay an upwards of $20 for. I found that the more it expanded, the more I wanted it as well. It was like a siren song to me, and I noticed I wasn't alone. Leonard had put more than a few people off the bottle, but all of them seemed to be looking at it with great expectation. No matter what we were doing, I noticed other people glancing back and licking their lips, clearly interested in having a taste just as much as I was. I began to plan how I would get there first. I wanted to drink until I was done, and the idea of sharing it with anyone suddenly made me feel very angry. Night, Leia. We'll see you next time, all right? You guys feel better, okay? Good night, Lance and Ram and Blaze. You guys have a good night, too. Hey, Janet said suddenly, staring at me. Try that again. Hey, Janet said suddenly, startling me out of my thoughts. Heck of a party, huh? I nodded, my eyes straying back towards the bottle as I told her it sure was. Janet certainly was having a good time. Her cheeks were pinker. Damn. Cheeks were pinker than I ever remember seeing them, and she looked giggly. All around us, people appeared to be equally as flushed, and there was quite a lot of dancing and laughing, and other things happening. You want to dance? She asked, but I was distracted. I realized I'd been looking at the bottle again. Checking my watch, I saw that it had actually been breathing for close to 2 hours. It had to be ready by now. There was no way that he could keep me off of it much longer. Hey, Janet asked as she snapped her fingers next to my ear. Are you all right? I asked if you wanted to dance, and you seemed like you're kind of spacing out tonight. Huh? Sure. Something was playing on the stereo, something I was familiar with, and as Janet and I went out to the dance floor, I can't read tonight, guys. Sorry. And as Janet and I went out to the dance floor, it got slow enough that we could sway together. Janet and I weren't exactly dating, but I got the feeling that she might like to. Janet and I had known each other since high school, but it wasn't until college that we had really begun to spend a lot of time together. We were friends, we had some classes most semester, but lately she had been inviting me over to just hang out, and a lot of it was spent pretty close on the couch or talking about old memories. I knew there were some feelings there. There were some feelings on my end as well, but this was the first time that we had ever really explored anything like that. I'd always just been her friend, the shoulder to cry on, but as she leaned her head against that shoulder, I started to think there might be more there. It might be out of the weird fugue state it brought. It brought me out of the weird fugue state that I'd been in, and I started to feel a little bit more like myself. Great party, I said offhandedly, immediately kicking myself for the lame remark. Thanks, though it seems like everyone's a little bit distracted. I don't know what it is. It almost feels like maybe Leonard oversold that wine a little bit, don't you think? And as she said it, I saw her run her tongue over her lips. Do you think he'll let people try it soon? I've been waiting all night, and if it's anything but delicious, I think he might have a riot on his hands. It's got to be soon, I said, and my voice sounded a little husky, even to my own ears. He can't keep watching it much longer. Does it seem like it's gotten bigger to you? I remember it being much smaller, but now it seems like it might actually serve everyone. I glanced over my shoulder and almost gasped. She was right. It had gotten a lot bigger. The bottle was now like something that might take two hands to lift. Everybody could get as much of it as they wanted, but I realized that it wouldn't last for long. The way he had been overselling it, everybody would want as much as they could drink, and I really didn't think it would be very long, maybe a couple of glasses, before someone took the bottle from him. I rubbed my eyes a little, not sure what I was seeing at first. The bottle had grown, yes, but something else had happened too. It was breathing again, the glass moving in and out like it was panting. There was also something coming from the neck of the bottle. I don't know if you'd call it smoke or maybe mist, but it was streaming out slowly and deliberately. Leonard was sitting beside the bottle with the biggest grin on his face I'd ever seen. My grandmother had often said that he looked like the cat that had gotten into the cream, and that's exactly what he looked like to me right now. Hey, do you want to maybe get out of here for a minute? I looked down at Janet and saw that she wasn't focused on the bottle. She was focused on me, her eyes looking almost the same way mine did as they tried to make sense of Leonard and his weird bottle. She was looking smokily at me, and clearly she'd been drinking something tonight. Her face was flushed, and she looked like she was considering something that might not be altogether healthy. I thought about that a moment longer, and my mind finally said, fuck it. I'd been drinking too. We could make bad decisions together, if that's what she wanted. Good night, Cindy. Have a good night. Sure, I said. Where are we going? My room. I think there's something there I should have shown you a long time ago. I followed her, and it might be why I'm alive to tell you the story right now. I'll spare you the gory details. I'll spare you the gory details, but we had about 20 minutes of what I would call the best time of my life. It was definitely worth the wait, and I hoped she agreed, though it's not like I could ask her now. We'd just finished lying beside each other on her double bed as the decor of her room looked down on us. Janet's room was an even separation between the woman she was becoming and the girl that she had been before she went to college. The walls were covered in band posters, colorful horses, and a smattering of movie posters as well. Some of them were movies I had even seen, movies we had seen together, and they seemed to be glowering down at me in the semi-darkness of her room. As we lay there, I began to notice a sound coming from the living room. It wasn't an unpleasant sound, more like what we were doing here, but it was growing in volume, and Janet picked her head up groggily as she noticed too. "I've got to tell them to keep it down. They're going to make my neighbors complain, and then the landlord's going to yell at me. If you're still here when I get back, though, maybe we'll consider trying that again." She kissed me on the forehead, and she opened the door to her bedroom and walked out. I heard the volume go up by about 10 decibels from the other room. I lay there for a few minutes, still basking in the afterglow. But when I heard someone scream, I got up and went to see what was going on. Outside, everything had changed. The bottle had begun to do more than smoke as it sat in the middle of the table, and there was an odd light erupting from the guts of it. People were lying on the floor, doing things that Janet and I had been doing not too long ago. There was a real orgy going on in there, and I saw that Janet had been pulled into a throng of people as they moved around her. Leonard was standing on the table now, looking as if he had done something amazing, and when he spoke, it was with all the confidence of a Midwestern snake oil salesman. "I told you all to be patient. I told you all to let it breathe, but some of you don't listen very well. You just had to have a taste, and now you'll see what comes of it. Behold, the spirit you were looking for." It was more than lights now. Strange phantoms were moving around the room amidst the light show, and when they touched people, it seemed to invigorate them even more. People were out of control, moving in tight clumps as they pressed against each other like amorous jackhammers. People had begun to bleed, people had begun to scream, and before anyone could notice me, I closed the door. I didn't know what was going on. I was honestly a little too drunk to process any of it, and as the screams got louder and louder, I put my hands over my ears and eyes and tried to block them out. It was like the scene out of Raiders of the Lost Ark. If I didn't acknowledge them, maybe they would leave me alone. I would be free to leave when they were done. I felt like a coward, but what else was there? There was no fighting that. It was either join or hide. It went on for quite a while, longer than my own bit of revelry had lasted. When my phone told me that it was approaching midnight, though, the sounds began to change. The sounds of lovemaking and conquest were replaced by screams of agony. People began to beg whatever this was to stop, and some of their cries were choked out prematurely. I got up and walked towards the door, but something stopped me before I could wrap my hand around the knob. Whatever was out there would take me as well. And right then, I just wanted to stay away. I just wanted to stay as far away from it as I could get. Then midnight struck, and all was suddenly silent, like a soundtrack turned off without warning. I didn't move. I didn't immediately get up, but eventually my curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door to Janet's room and looked out into a sea of corpses that looked as if they had been mummified. Whatever had happened to them, it had drained them dry. They were all stiff and unmoving, their empty eyes staring at the ceiling as their faces were poised in looks of unimaginable horror. Whatever they had seen before they died had really stuck with them, and I didn't know what else to do except get the hell out of there. I thought about calling the cops, but what would I tell them? I'd been at a party, and then suddenly everyone had just died. How would I explain what had happened to these people? And more importantly, how would I explain why I was still here and why nothing had happened to me? One thing I did notice before I left, and it's something that makes me wonder if Leonard had known what would happen from the start. What I assume was Leonard's corpse was lying beneath the table, the one he had been guarding all night. But the bottle was gone. Whatever Leonard had uncorked that night had been beyond his understanding as much as ours. But I guess in the end he had been right. It had needed to breathe, but maybe it had gotten a little too much air. Whatever the case, I think we had summoned a spirit that none of us was prepared for. I suppose the cops will come and talk to me tomorrow. I intend to tell them that I left the party early, and I don't intend to tell them anything about glowing bottles or spirits moving around the apartment. Best case scenario, they would think I was insane. Worst case scenario, they would assume I was involved and take me to jail. Either way, Janet's last party was one that will stick with me for a very long time. Whatever spirit was moving through us last night was a little too potent. And there you go. That is, one of our short stories for the week. Alrighty. Let's see here. I think we'll go to a story about a new car. Well, not a new car, more like a used car. However, it's a new to him car. It's called Buyer Beware. Hang on. Had to write down a story idea so I don't lose it. Got to save some steam for the grandpa story there, too. Alrighty, so this is called Buyer Beware, and I hope you guys enjoy it. The deal really was too good to be true. It was a late 70s Firebird with less than 500 miles on it. It had custom wheels, and the interior looked like it had just been fully cleaned and serviced. It even still had the original floor mats, and as I sat there in the woman's driveway and looked at it, I felt sure that it either wouldn't crank or it would need a lot of work. "You must be Sam," the woman said as she came down the steps to her home. I turned, jumping a little as the screen door slammed. "You must be Miss Lindor. Thanks for letting me see the car. The deal was so good that I just knew I had to jump on it." Miss Lindor was not the woman I had expected. Not exactly. I had expected a much older woman, but Miss Lindor looked as if she might be younger than my own mother. She had the keys on one finger, twirling them slowly as if asking me if I wanted to go for a ride. But what really caught my attention was her eyes when she looked at me. She seemed to be trying to assess me, as if trying to figure out whether I could afford the car. That's what I thought at first, but the longer she looked at me, the more I thought it might have been something different. She was looking at me as if she thought I might be unworthy, or maybe whether she could sell a car to someone like me. In retrospect, given what I found out about it, I think she was weighing whether or not her soul could take selling me a car like this. She tossed me the keys, and when I cranked the engine, I heard how smooth it was, and it created more questions than answers. Hang on, I gotta readjust. A little stretch there. "How much did you say you wanted for it?" I asked, thinking the price must have been a mistake. "If you have $5,000 cash, then it can be yours right now. I don't have any need for it. It was my husband's car." The way she said husband made me think there might be more to it than that. Maybe ex-husband or recently separated husband might have been a better title. But I put it out of my mind as I ran a hand along the pollen-smeared exterior of the car. "What's wrong with it?" I finally asked, feeling it was time to get to the blunt end of the deal. Nobody sold a car like this for anything less than 5 figures, and I just knew that there had to be something going on beneath the hood. It had transmission issues. There was a problem with the suspension. It needed several alignments to get back into something that you could drive on the road. Something like that. Nobody sells a car that cheap if it's in good shape. And I was becoming more and more suspicious the longer we talked. She looked embarrassed, and I again suspected that she might be selling this car without her husband's permission. It was an ex-husband who had been taking advantage of her and maybe had taken everything except the car, and now she was trying to recoup some small amount of revenge. It was a boyfriend's car who had done her wrong, and now she wanted to make him suffer by selling his baby. Maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was her dad's car and he had recently died and she just couldn't stand to look at it. Whatever the case, I just knew there had to be some history here. "Well, it was my boyfriend's car." Oh, husband. Ugh. Can't read tonight, guys. Sorry. Got that no reading. "Well, it was my husband's car. He died recently, very recently, and he died in the car. I've tried to drive it since, but every time I look at it or think about getting behind the wheel, I get a stab of panic, and I just can't bring myself to do it. It's been sitting in my driveway for months while I try to muster up the courage to drive it again, but I don't think I ever will. I'd rather get a little money for it and find someone who will actually drive it, rather than let it sit here and rust all to pieces. You seem like a nice kid, and a nice boy like you needs a nice car. Take it for a test drive, and if you aren't completely sold on it, then I will absolutely understand." Hang on a sec. Oh, they didn't leave me a message. That must not have been important. Oh. I thought about it for about half a second and then climbed into the driver's seat before looking over at the passenger seat. I'd expected her to climb in, expected her to ride along with me, but when I looked, she was still on the sidewalk and shaking her head at me. Just don't be gone long. Take it around the block and let me know what you think. If you want it, it's yours for $5,000. When I got behind the wheel, the car just felt right. It was like I'd been born to drive it. And when I pulled out of the driveway and turned towards the end of the street, I was already pretty sure I was going to buy it. The interior smelled like soap. The floor mats squeaked a little when my feet moved across them, and the whole thing looked ready for the showroom. I couldn't believe she was selling it so cheaply, but as I pulled up to the stop sign, checking my mirrors, something caught my eye for the briefest of seconds, and it made me jump a little. It was something I could have probably pushed off on the sun, or maybe the tinting on the back window, but it seemed like someone was sitting in the seat behind me. They were leaning against the door, hands folded in their lap, and the smile on his face was almost cartoonishly big. It was a man, his greasy hair hanging over his eyes, and as he glared at me in the rearview mirror, I felt a jolt in my stomach. I put on the brakes and turned around, looking in the back seat if All right. Looking in the back seat as if expecting to find someone waiting there. But I found nothing. The back seat was empty, not even any dust or change in the floorboards. I turned back around as someone beeped at me and took a right at the stop sign as I drove down the road. I went around the block and then came back to Miss Lindor's house, reaching into my pocket already as I held out the money. "If you've got the title, I'll sign it and pay you right now." Other than the weird incident in the back seat, I loved the car, and I would have paid 2 or 3 times as much for it. She rushed inside and got the title, signing it right there on the hood of the car. Thinking back on it, she was way too eager to get rid of it. But I didn't notice at the time. I was too busy laughing internally about the good deal I had got and about how good I was going to look behind the wheel of my brand new car. Excuse me. Some of that excitement wore off on the way home when I went to check my mirrors and saw the same grinning face looking at me in the mirror. He was sitting in the same spot, his legs crossed and his hands in his lap. But when I turned around, there was still nothing there. I shook my head as I spun back to face front, thinking it had been a reflection or a trick of the light or something. It was a new car. I was just seeing weird shadows or seeing something in the rearview mirror that wasn't there. It was an optical illusion. Something, but the longer I drove the car, the more I began to notice it. It was always the same. That smiling man sitting in the back seat, glaring at me with his eyes and smiling into the mirror. The longer I owned the car, the worse it got. I began to become aware of a smell that would follow the appearance of the man. It was a strangely musty smell. The kind of smell your jacket gets when you put it away wet. It wasn't too bad in the daylight, but if I were driving at night, it would get even worse. I'd put music on. Sometimes I'd even put my headphones in, but I could hear the stranger humming from the back seat whenever I drove it at night. It was Beethoven's Fifth, hummed at an oddly gravelly voice. It would fall on me like rain in October, and it was almost like it was creeping over my skin, like fingers, the longer it went on. After a while, it started to say my name. Sam, Sam, Sam. Over and over and over again. It would start out low and rumbling, something that could have been anything, but by the end it would be practically yelling at me as I drove to wherever I was going. Sam, Sam, Sam. Some nights it was all I could do to deal with it long enough to get home. One night, I suppose it kind of saved my life, but it was far from something I was grateful for, especially after the scare it gave me. I was driving home after drinking with some friends, maybe a little bit drunk, but not bad enough to affect my driving. I was doing a little bit of nodding. It was late, I was tired, but when the voice came from the back seat, it almost seemed to be lulling me to sleep. It was whispering my name, slower and slower, and as I listened to it over whatever podcast I had put on to keep me awake, my eyes got heavier and heavier. I was losing seconds a little at a time. When I finally closed my eyes and began to snore, the whispering seemed to be over. Sam! I shook myself awake, coming in to find that I'd almost run a red light. The truck that had been coming from the other direction would have nailed me, but whatever was in the car had stopped me from being in a really bad accident. I looked in the rearview mirror as I slammed on the brakes, expecting to see him there, but the back seat was empty. I could still smell that musty smell of him, though, and it was almost as if I could hear his words echoing in my head. That was when I realized I had to do something. That was when I realized I needed to talk to Miss Lindor. Miss Lindor was out in her garden when I drove up. She turned her head and almost seemed deflated when she saw the vehicle. It was as if she had been waiting for me to bring it back and had only been living on borrowed happiness while it was away. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw her dust off her hands and look at me hopelessly. "Oh, good afternoon, Sam. Did you need something? I think I have another copy of the title if it slipped through your hands." I told her I didn't need a title. I needed to know what had happened to her car and, more importantly, her ex-husband. "Well, that's a little personal, don't you think?" she said, but she didn't look sure. "Under any other circumstances, I'd agree with you, ma'am, but not considering what's living in the back of my car." She'd opened her mouth, clearly ready to fire back with something, but when the words fell over her, she seemed to deflate even more. "Come inside. I'll give you a piece of pound cake and some coffee, and I'll tell you the whole sad story." I wanted to tell her that we could talk right here on the front porch, but as mad as I was, pound cake was still pound cake, and a cup of coffee would be pretty nice right about now. She brought me in and fixed my coffee just the way I liked it and put a big piece of lemon pound cake down on the table in front of me. She took off her dirt-stained apron and put on a different one, her kitchen apron, I suppose, and then sat across from me as she lit a cigarette and took a long drag before beginning. "Marvin and I were married for 35 years. That didn't mean we were happy, and I'd be one of the people that would agree that our marriage was 35 years too long. Marvin was, well, he was a terrible man. He liked to drink, he liked to fight, and sometimes he brought his favorite things home with him to share with me. I've had to tell people that I've run into quite a few doorknobs and slipped down quite a few flights of stairs in the 35 years I was married to him. It wasn't until he retired that I figured out about some of his less healthy hobbies. Marvin had been a long-haul trucker, so he was only home every few weeks. Apparently, he'd been getting up to some less than savory things while he'd been on the road. Marv had a particular liking for young women, and I don't mean college co-eds. I'd seen the way he looked at them, but it wasn't until he tried to bring one home that I put my foot down. That was a beating I'll never forget. I thought he was going to kill me, and when he was done, he stood over me and told me not to get involved in his business ever again. I was afraid for a little while, but once I started noticing the way he looked at the younger girls in the neighborhood, I got over my fear real quick. She thumbed some of her ash into the little ashtray on the corner of the table before continuing. No lemon pound cake for you guys, all right? The only thing Marv loved more than fighting and drinking was his car. He only drove it when he had to, and he would take it into the driveway and wash it whenever he was home. He would cruise in it sometimes when he was trying to pick up victims, or so I was told. He was in it when I caught him, so that makes sense. I was supposed to be at the market, but it had gotten a little bit late that day. One of my neighbors had asked to borrow the car, and it was so late in the afternoon that I let her do it. She had needed to take her daughter to the doctor, and her car had just quit on her. It was too late to go to the market anyway. Marv would be home in a couple of hours, and he would want his dinner. So I told her to just bring it back with gas in it. I just started making dinner when I heard him pull his car into the driveway and then into the garage. I wondered why he was home so early, and when I went to the garage, I saw him sitting in the car with a girl that I didn't know. God only knows what he told her to get her there, but none of it mattered much to me. He was touching her, just brushing her clothes and running her fingers through her hair, but the girl was pressed against the door of his car in a very familiar way. She was terrified of him. Suddenly I knew I had to do something. I went out to the car and startled him, popping him in the head with a wrench before he could do more than let his hands roam a little. I told the girl to get out of there, told her to not to tell anybody, and to just go. I suppose she did just that. Marv was out cold, but I hadn't hit him hard enough to draw blood. I thought about it for a moment, and, well, finally I did what I'd seen done in 100 movies and TV shows. I hooked the silver hose from the dryer to the tailpipe. I put the other end in the car window and rolled the window up nearly all the way. I closed up the garage and went back to cooking dinner. Then, about an hour later, I went out to the garage and discovered, oh no, my poor husband had committed suicide in the car that he loved so much. The police didn't question it. It had been a suicide after all, and after what they discovered from some concerned citizens, most of them thought he'd probably killed himself out of guilt over what he'd been doing to the teenage girls in the neighborhood. Nobody questioned me too harshly, and life went on. Apparently, life went on for Marv as well. She saw that I'd finished my pound cake and went to go get me another piece before being asked. I didn't want another piece. The story was making me a little sick to my stomach, but I ate it. The story might have been terrible, but the pound cake was really tasty. It was subtle at first. I would be driving the car, and I'd see him in the rearview mirror. He would just be sitting back there, grinning at me. At first I thought it was my guilt, but then he began to say my name. He began to tell me that the cops would catch up to me eventually, and that's when I stopped driving the car altogether. I tried to sell it, of course I did, but you weren't the first person to come back with questions. Eventually I dropped the price as much as I dared, and still, people brought it back. I've saged the car. I've had a priest bless it, but nothing helps. I suppose you'll want your money back. I can't even blame you for it. I did you dirty, and I'm sorry for that. I just wanted to be rid of this car so badly that I was willing to do almost anything. She put my money on the table, the same collection of bills that I'd handed to her a few weeks ago. I picked it up, but before I could pocket it, she put another $100 on the table. What's that for? I asked. I need your help with something. And what might that be? I asked, not touching the money. I know what I have to do now. There's no way I'm ever going to be able to get him out of the car. I've tried everything I know of, and there seems to be only one other option. He loved that car, more than he ever loved anything else. And it seems like the best thing I can do is to send it to him, in whatever corner of hell he now resides in. I agreed to help her, and she seemed glad for the company. I followed her to the old quarry, and we found a rock big enough to jam into the wheel. Onto the pedal, sorry. Found a rock big enough to jam onto the pedal of the old Firebird. I got it up to speed and bailed out before it went over the edge, and as it fell, I thought I could see that grinning specter behind the wheel. He was grinning ear to ear, fit to split, my grandmother would have said, and when it hit the ground in a wave of flames and metal, I opened the passenger side door to my car and took her home. I suppose when a deal is just too good to be true, you have to see it through. Fuck you, other computer. You have to see it through to the end. Alrighty. There's your other short story. And now we're going to move on to the grandpa story, which I know is what you've all been waiting for. As many of you will remember from last time, Grandpa had told a story about a house in a gully, and then he had fallen unconscious when his grandson came back to see him. Grandson had came back from walking Glimmer home, and found him laid out on the porch. So he took him to the hospital. And now I think we're going to learn a little bit more about Grandpa's condition, as Marcus did last time. So, without further ado, this one's called The Truth, and I hope you enjoy it. The only company I had in the hospital was the beeping of the machines. I felt so lonely, sitting in the ER as Grandpa lay in the bed beside me and fought for his life. No more than a few hours ago, we had all been sitting on the back porch, going about our lives as usual, and now it felt like everything had suddenly changed. I had called John and told him what was going on, and he had called some of his friends at the hospital and told them to expect us. John lamented that he couldn't be there, but he had nearly been too drunk to make it home, and he was afraid that if he tried to drive up there, he'd get in an accident. Keep me posted the second you know anything. I want to come visit him, and I want to be there for you. You're my friend, and that's not something that I take lightly, he had said. I appreciated him for that, more than he would ever know. I'd sent Glimmer a text, but Glimmer was always on the move, and who knew when she would get it. She kept the little cell phone charged from the portable batteries that I gave her on her nightly visits, but sometimes she would be away doing things for her tribe, and it would be dead for a couple of days before she made it back to the house. I couldn't be angry about it. She had other responsibilities besides drinking on my back porch with me and my grandpa. But I still missed her when she wasn't around. I'd come to wonder if that's what life would be like once we were married. Me sitting at home wondering when I would see her while she hunted and supported the tribe. Would I move into the cave with the moon elves? Would she move to Grandpa's house to me? If we had children, what would that situation look like? Would they spend their time with her and then come back to see me after dark? I didn't know, and not knowing was harder than answering the questions. I sat with my phone on my knee and just thought about what I should do next and what my options were here. Grandpa had spent about 2 hours in the emergency room before they admitted him. I'd answered about 1,000 questions before his doctor arrived and told me he was going to go up to the ICU. That's when he told me about the condition that Grandpa had been keeping a secret for the last few months. He'd seemed so surprised that I didn't know. He knew that Grandpa wasn't letting me into his doctor's appointments anymore, and he knew that he'd been keeping his diagnosis very hush-hush, but I don't think he suspected that it was a secret even from me. We talked about telling his family, about telling his friends, but you've been his caregiver for nearly half a decade. I assumed you already knew. Why wouldn't I? You take care of him, and he depends on you. I'm not sure why he decided to leave you in the dark, but it seems counterproductive to his treatment. I didn't have an answer for that. It was when I planted myself. I didn't have an answer for that. And it was then that I planted myself in one of the hospital chairs and just started thinking. I could understand why he didn't want to tell my mom. My mother was a harridan, and I think he knew she would ultimately blame me for his condition. I could have no more given him cancer than I could have cured him, but my mother had always seen me as something of a family disappointment. That's why they had sent me to live with Grandpa in the first place. They'd been tired of me wasting my life playing video games and going to school when I felt like it. They'd grown tired of caring for me and decided that if my grandpa was also going to be irresponsible, then maybe we could take care of each other. It had worked out splendidly, the two of us teaching each other and taking care of each other, but no matter what the doctor told her, she would ultimately say that his decline was my fault. My uncle wouldn't blame me, but he wouldn't be able to do anything helpful either. He had his own life, he had a career, and he wasn't going to be able to fix Grandpa, so he would just wait around for the inevitable. None of them knew what Grandpa did. None of them knew about the life he lived. None of them would have believed me if I told them. My uncle and my mother and my aunt were all of the position. My uncle. Ugh. Shit's killing me. My uncle and my aunt and my mother were all firmly positioned in the real world, and none of them had any time for magic or fantasy, which was Grandpa's bread and butter. I didn't even know what would happen if Grandpa died. We had never really talked about the will or about what would happen to his house or his things. I assumed they would go to my mother and his other children, but Grandpa had hinted many times that he wanted to leave certain things to me. He knew that anything he left my mom would be sold, and anything he left my uncle or my aunt would sit in a corner and collect dust. My uncle had his own problems, and my mother had debts that she would want to pay with Grandpa's antiques and his eccentric novelties. In the end, I could be out of a home and in need of somewhere else to stay in very short order. I looked at the old man as he lay in his bed, one machine breathing for him as another machine beat life. It beeped. Strange word choices. One machine breathing for him as another machine beeped his life away. I sure do wish you were here to tell me a story about how this was absolutely normal and how everything was going to be okay. Seemed like Grandpa always had a story about how whatever was going on was nothing when it was compared to something he had done. Nothing could beat a Grandpa story for making everything seem nice and normal and manageable. That had always been Grandpa's superpower. He could put you at ease with a well-timed story and a bottle of beer and a little time spent on the back porch as nature happened around you. I swiped a hand across my face and realized I was crying. I wasn't ready to lose Grandpa, but I didn't want to see him exist like this. Grandpa would have considered this some kind of hell, and I didn't know what to do to get him out of here. Marcus? I looked up at the sound of my name and saw Dr. Winters standing in the doorway to Grandpa's ICU room. She was wearing a white coat that I'd never seen before and carrying a chart. She looked like any of the doctors here, and I suppose that was by design, if she was trying to blend in. Dr. Winters, I said, as I wiped my face and tried not to let her see me cry. What are you doing here? I didn't know you did rounds at the hospital. She smiled and had the good grace to pretend that she hadn't seen my sorrow. I do psychiatric consults every now and again. The clinic, I know, seems a little gimmicky, but I really do have a degree in psychiatric medicine. You'd be surprised how easy it is to get a doctorate when you have access to the wealth of knowledge humanity has accumulated over the years. I actually finished my doctorate in a year and a half, and it's probably the only reason I haven't been shut down for what I do. I saw your grandfather's name on the hospital roster. and decided that I'd come up and see if he was okay. One look at him had her shaking her head, and I saw her wipe at her own eyes before she said, "I'm sorry. Of course, he isn't okay. They don't put people in the ICU for no reason. They... Marcus, I wish there was something I could do, but oncology isn't really my strong suit." I nodded, but then I looked at her as if she had let slip something that maybe she shouldn't have. "Wait, how do you know he has cancer?" He came to me about a month ago," she said with a sigh. "He made me promise that I wouldn't talk to you. I begged him to tell you. It wasn't fair. You were taking care of him and you didn't know, but he said he didn't want you to worry, and I promised I would keep his secret." I thought about that for a moment. It was so very Grandpa to go confide to someone he had considered to be an enemy not long ago, rather than burden someone he cared about. I wanted to be mad, but it was hard while he was laying here in bed. What was done, and getting upset about it wouldn't help matters any. I don't know if he's going to make it out of this one. He's tough, but I don't know anybody that's tougher than cancer. Don't give up on him just yet. Your grandfather's got a lot of fight left in him, and if anybody can come back from something like this, then it's probably him. We talked a little longer, just sort of chit-chatting as she kept me company, but eventually she said she needed to get back home, and we said our goodbyes. That left me with nothing but my thoughts again, and it was a place I couldn't say that I was enjoying being in. I must have dozed off there for a minute, and when I came to, someone was looking at me. "Hey there, kiddo." The sky was beginning to go pink outside, and I could see the clock over his bed showing 4 in the morning. I looked up to find Grandpa looking back at me, his eyes a little foggy, but overall, being conscious was a step in the right direction. He was confused, that much was obvious, and as I got my wits about me, he smiled and waved a hand in front of my face. "Yoo-hoo, anybody home? Seems like maybe you ought to be in the bed instead of me. I'm not sure all your dogs are barking quite yet." There we go. "No, I don't think they are. Gramps, you collapsed again. We're at the hospital." Grandpa nodded as he looked around. "That would explain all the tubes and the beeping machinery. When are they gonna let me go? I really didn't want to miss my show this weekend." "Grandpa, when were you going to tell me that you had cancer?" Grandpa stiffened a little, seeming to understand that the cat was out of the bag, and turned to me as if we were assessing how upset I was. "I guess they told you." "Hard not to when you're in the hospital for collapsing due to lack of lung function. The question is, why didn't you tell me? Did you think I was going to leave? Did you think that just because the laughs were over, I was going to abandon you?" Grandpa shook his head. "No, that wasn't what I was worried about. It's my job to protect others, and if I can't do that, then what good am I? I wasn't afraid that you would leave me, but I was afraid of distracting you from Duties that will very soon be yours. What? When I die, it will be up to you to take over protecting the city. I was hoping I'd have a few more years to train you, but it appears that we're out of time. You'll have to lean on the people who are here to help you, and they'll probably have to lean on you. Be good to them, and don't blame yourself for what's happening to me. You couldn't have stopped it any more than I could have. Been looking for some way to fix it for a while now, but can't seem to find any way to cure what's inside me. I may have some options, but most of them are just as bleak as dying. I wanted your memories of me to be good ones, to be happy, and I didn't want you to remember me as a sick old man dying in bed. I didn't know what to say to that. I reached out and took Grandpa's hand, and the two of us just sat in a companionable silence for a while. We didn't say much. There was really nothing to say. The two of us were scared and didn't know what the future might hold, but I knew I wanted to be there for Grandpa when the time came. I picked my head up when I heard a ruckus out in the hallway. Someone was explaining to someone that they couldn't just go in there, and a familiar voice was telling them that they couldn't stop her. Ah, shoot. Hang on a second. I forgot to get those lines up. I might want to put those where they're going to be of most use. Let's see. Oh, dang it. Well, I'll have to do it another way. That sounds about right.
It was something he wanted to discuss along with me. He made me better, or else I might be. You can be a particularly infuriating male sometimes.
Hang on, gotta find the right lines.
If I have to follow you all the way, there I'll go. You can't stop me. I want to come with you.
I think I got the wrong ones. Damn it. I'll have to go find them. I'll find them and put them in later. Hang on. Stand by for a second, guys. I've got the email here. It's not too terribly hard to finagle them. We'll just pick them out of here, and those are the ones that won't. Stand by. Just a second. Yeah, I want to download. All right.
Party of Boy Scouts against the people near the Gili. Their scoutmaster.
I'm gonna find these Glimmerland.
My party put the creatures outside.
There we go. Okay.
I'm sure that they all have a story. Well, I'd hate for people to come looking for. person not so great is Heidi. They had gone pretty far from their campsite. Touch me again.
There it is.
My fiance is there.
Okay. That's the one. Alrighty. Get rid of those. Keep these. So.
My fiance is there with his grandfather, a man I have known since I was a child. I will go in and see him, and you cannot stop me.
In case it didn't come through too well, I will also read it. There we go. Okay. My fiance is in there with his grandfather, a man I've known since I was a child, and I will go in and see him, and you cannot stop me. Ma'am, if he's in there, you have to understand there's protocols for this. I can't just let you in dressed, well, like that. The hospital has rules, and you can't just do whatever you want. Now I'm going to have to ask you to... He made a noise then, a weird, grunting, high-pitched noise that made me think he had probably tried to grab her. You better go, Grandpa said, a ghost of his old smile showing through. It sounds like if you don't, she's probably gonna kill him. I had made it halfway into the hallway when I heard another familiar voice. I walked out of the ICU and found Glimmer holding the security guard's arm at an odd angle as he begged her to let him go. John was the... If I could talk. John was there as well. Frankie having driven him as the two of them stood a safe distance back. John was telling Glimmer to let him go, and telling the security guard, a man named Carl, that she was very worried about the man in there, and in a heightened state of sadness. Glimmer released him, glowering at the security guard before saying, Glimmer released him, glowering at the security guard before saying,
I want to come with you.
ah, damn it. Okay. Well, shit.
You can be a part.
That's annoying. I did a thing. Hang on.
You were supposed to wait. My fiance.
We're just riddled with problems right now. Damn. Put the fries in the bag, Audacity. Come on. Okay. There we go. There we go.
Touch me again, and you'll be in a heightened state of something that you probably won't be sickness.
Okay, so then Glimmer says,
Touch me again, and you'll be in a heightened state of something, but it probably won't be sadness.
this is what I get for trying to do things in real time here. Put, just put the lines on the thing, Audacity, come on. Don't be extra. Thank you. Anyway, so Glimmer said, touch me again and you'll be in a heightened state of something, though it probably won't be silence. Anyway. We went to stand in the memorial garden after that, both John and I thinking it might be a good idea to get Glimmer out of sight. I brought them up to speed on what was going on, and all of us, even Frankie, seemed to feel the gravity of the situation. Grandpa might leave the hospital, but he probably wasn't going to be the same old man that we had all grown to love. Something had changed, and I wasn't sure what to do about it. John assured me that he would be there for me if I needed him, and Glimmer said that she would always be there for me if I needed her. Frankie said that she would help too, though she was new to our problems and our little family, so she probably didn't understand what exactly she was agreeing to. We sat and talked for a little while, the sun coming up over the edge of the garden, before John and Glimmer decided to take their leave. I went back inside and turned... I went back inside and returned to Grandpa's room to find him asleep. That was good. Let the old man get his sleep. The next few days, weeks, or maybe even months were probably going to be messy. Alrighty, and there you go. That is your Grandpa story for the night. Oh, it's just in time, too. I'm getting sleepy. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the stream tonight, and I do hope you guys will join us next time for more fun and games. I'm thinking maybe a Stragview story for next week. And then I don't know what I've got the short stories ready for next week, but I'm thinking maybe a Stragview story for next week, and we'll do another laughing audience story. Yeah, we will catch you guys next time, and thanks for coming down to the stream. You guys have a good evening. This is Dr. Plague signing off. Have a wonderful evening and a spooky time.